Tarik Talk. Your host, Tarik Mendes, takes you on a journey with guests from all around the world. Broadcasting around the world. Around the world. This is Tarik Talk.
All right, guys, today I'm here with Michael Casalinho. Michael, how are you today?
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Thank you for being on the podcast. I'm so excited.
Thank you
An
for
entrepreneur, a chef, so many things. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Portuguese, of course. You know, I was first gen American. So my parents moved here, to Newark, where most Portuguese people moved into in the 70s and 60s and in the 80s, of course. So I'm 39 years old. My life started there in Ironbound. That's where I was born, St. James Hospital, which no longer exists. So I grew up, I speak fluent Portuguese. I write it, I read it. That was just something that was instilled always from a young age in my household. My parents would speak to us in the native Portuguese language. And then that just stuck with me and,
That's very funny you say that, because my mom was the same way. Like, we weren't allowed to speak English in the household. So when people ask me, "Hey, do you know how to write or read Portuguese?" I'm like, I'm like, that's like the basic, thing you can do. What do you mean you don't? They're like, "Oh no." So that's so interesting that you say that, because like as I get older, I really appreciate being able to not lose our culture in a sense, because a lot of people do.
Yeah, especially nowadays, and it's culture to me is super important. I think hence why I got into the industry I did, and I focused just on the cultural aspect of it, because it's so easy to get lost nowadays in the industry, and kind of go in a different direction. I was always proud of where I came from, of the heritage, and I think that it's our responsibility to pass that down to the next generation, because nowadays with social medias and all that stuff, things can get a little complicated, and we can lose sight of the actual, the importance of things in life, and I think that the cultural aspect of things is can die out if we do not put it out on the forefront,
Absolutely.
It's very important for me anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree. I 100% agree. And how did you get into the business? Like,
man, my life's been very interesting. I've started at a very young age, being somewhat, I guess, if you would, an entrepreneur. I always had these high ambitions and goals of being something someday in life. And I think that at a very young age, I just, I set out for that journey. I think it's just naturally in me. I was never, really good at school or never focused in school. In fact, I hated school.
Yeah.
And I just, when I was always in classes, I would, my brain would be somewhere else.
Yeah.
I would be looking into doing other things. And I think that spiraled in to eventually, I did drop out of school. In fact, not many people know I never finished high school.
Oh, wow.
All
the greats did the same thing.
Yeah,
so.
I never finished high school. I mean, well, I wouldn't categorize myself in the greats. Who knows? Maybe one day.
I think you're pretty amazing. Yeah.
Thank you, man. That means a lot to me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I dropped out of high school. I just at that time, I was already making money. I had a job, and I already had started my own business by high school. And I was always a little bit more ahead of my time, always a little more mature than what
wiser,
what somebody might technically my age or my grade would be. So I was always able to achieve certain things just because people thought I was older, perhaps. But I embarked on the journey of entrepreneurship very early on. It was a completely different field. It was in construction. Typical Portuguese thing, constructions and stuff like that. But I ended up, I always had a desire, I guess, for the business, from a very, very young age. And in fact, I'm going to, tell you a story. This kind of gives me goosebumps when I talk about it. And not many people know this. Actually, no one knows. It'll be the first time.
Exclusive. Thank you.
This is an exclusive here on your podcast. So when I was probably a freshman in high school or something like that, I always, when I was like 16, whatever, I would always work in Newark at a restaurant, being a busboy or something. When they had a party, I'd go in and help clear tables and stuff like that. So that's where it all started, really. But something about the business and it being in some way, shape, or form an art, right, an artistry thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Was what was so captivating for me. And I remember being either like a freshman or sophomore in high school and writing a biography. That was what we had to do in class.
Oh, wow.
Writing a biography on ourselves, or where do you see yourself in a few years from now, and so on and so forth. And a few years ago, after already having had one or two restaurants in my life, I was at my mother's house. Just, I went to
I was
visit.
just about to ask you, do you still have it?
Yeah, I went to visit Mom, and we're just like kind of, Mom, and I'm like, curious and nosy. I haven't been to Mom's house so many years, so you're like, hey, you know what? Let me see what's in these drawers. Maybe I'll find something that was mine, or when I was a kid or something. And I happened to be digging through a drawer, and I pull out these letters and these things, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is mine. I wrote this, and I'm reading the letter. In that letter, I wrote that I was gonna I wanted to be a restaurateur.
Oh, wow.
In that letter.
That's amazing.
It's freaky.
It's like a prophecy.
It's like a prophecy.
Wow.
Like I, it said I was going to be in the restaurant business, and I was going to have either a restaurant or a nightclub. I worked in the nightclub business at one point as well. I never had a club yet. But I've had several restaurants, and when reading that letter, I got so many goosebumps.
Oh,
man.
wow.
It was I envisioned it.
It's like manifest.
I manifested it.
Yeah.
I wrote it when
That's
I was
amazing.
Who knows, 16, 15, I don't know, and it came true without even realizing it. But it's freaky to think, right?
Yeah.
Like when,
That's
especially
funny
reading
you
that
say
letter,
that.
right?
Because see how the universe works. I remember when I went to your restaurant, and I didn't know you were the owner. And I remember you were like outside. You had like a grilling section, and then
outside during the pandemic.
And then I remember right before that, like a friend of mine opened a restaurant in New York, and I remember like I talked to you really. I was like, oh, you showed me where the hostess is, and I just remember you like, checking on the tables, on the staff. Your staff seemed so happy and well trained. You were doing amazing. And I remember I texted my friend and I said, oh my God, I was like, you should hire this guy. He's amazing, blah, blah, blah. He's like, okay, can you give me this info? And then it turns out you were the owner. Yeah. I said, oh my gosh, this is exactly what this town needs. But just like watching you, because when I was young, I started like two businesses as well. I dropped out of college. But I remember like seeing you, like I was like, wow, this like the food is great, the service is amazing. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you wait so long for like a cup of water or your food. Like you're on top of everything. I was like, my gosh, this dude, I don't know if he's on Adderall or 10 espressos, but like he's literally on top of everything. He's so aware. And I told my friend, I was like, you have to hire this guy. Like, this guy is amazing. But I was like, oh, he's the owner. I was like, even better. We need somebody dope like this.
Yeah.
And JC.
Unfortunately, that's my, or fortunately, depends how you look at it. That's my natural energy. When I do anything, I embed myself into it 100,000,000%. I throw in my all into it. Especially when I believe in it. And that in particular restaurant was very, which is called Broa Cafe. For those of you listening, want to know, that was an extreme passion project for me. It was something that, again, touching back on the culture, and about trying to keep the culture alive. And it's so funny how you mentioned that, because that was the purpose of that restaurant in particular, because I feel like, again, touching back on the, social media stuff nowadays, and it's easy to get lost and forget things, what really matter in life in those things. But it became a thing for me where. So let's just rewind a little bit. Going back to Newark, I was involved in a restaurant there. I was probably 20 years old.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so that would be my first restaurant. It was called Café Opção in the Ironbound section of Newark. I was involved in that project for about 5 years. So built that up and everything before coming into Jersey City. So I've been involved in the restaurant business for about 20 years now, and so when I left that restaurant, I felt like the reason why I left that because that restaurant was doing very well. It was a very big place. It sat like 300-400 people. It was a big place, yeah. But the reason why I left Newark was because I felt like. And maybe you can relate. Sometimes dealing with people who are kind of stuck,
like in a mentality.
In a mentality wise, and that happens frequently in small towns, neighborhoods, villages. It's quite normal, right? And I feel like people get comfortable. Right, you move from Portugal, you end up in Newark, and then you come from a small town or village. Whether it's Portugal, we could say Brazil, we could say Puerto Rico, we could say wherever, right? And anywhere in the world, you move out of your small city, town, or village. And you move into a new place. Why do you want to live the same way you used to? You left for a reason, so why not pursue the reasoning why you left and do something differently? And I feel like, people tend to stay comfortable and stay. It's like, oh, this feels nice.
Or I'm good. I don't have to do anything.
I don't need more. I'm all right.
I think that's very dangerous.
But yet, those people can also, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not here to criticize anyone on their beliefs, ways, or whatever. I'm just saying that speaking for myself, I was always super ambitious. I was like, I'm gonna live in a castle one day. I'm gonna have I'm gonna have all types of cars, and then I'm gonna be like a king. And a lot of people, it's hard to accept that. A lot of people can't accept that. They think you're arrogant. Who do you think you are? Oh my God, what are you, castle?
You're dreaming too big.
You dream too big. Who do you you think you're a king? Who do you think you're better than everybody? So it happens where people can kind of dilute your dream over the course of time, being surrounded in that environment, and it's an important thing to stay focused on your vision, on your mission, on your goal, no matter who's around. And your surroundings, though, have a big impact on who you are, what you become, right? Hence all those sayings where show me who you surround yourself with, and I'll tell you who you are, kind of thing, right? And so I felt like the people around the neighborhood weren't. Like, my concept at the time was so advanced, I guess, for the neighborhood that people weren't getting it or they weren't accepting it. So I felt like, unfortunately, I had plateaued in a form of success for the neighborhood. And the neighborhood would not allow me to become more successful than what it already was. And it can be for many reasons. It can be for their own lack of knowledge, their own lack of resources, their own lack of ambition, their own lack of, again, the knowledge to look into the future and see.
Have the vision.
Of something greater than what it already is, right? And then you have those who are just jealous, the haters, right? The haters that everyone has, right? And will always have. And, listen, if you have haters, it's a good thing. It means you're doing something right. It's like, as they say, good publicity or bad publicity is the same. You're doing something right. Whether it's good or bad, you're getting the publicity for 100%. It. So that means you're moving and shaking something, right? So then my how I ended up here in Jersey City was actually I went to high school in Jersey City. A lot of people don't know that. I went to Hudson Catholic. At the time, it was an all-boys school, and I guess I was a little problematic when I was younger.
Rebellious.
The rebellious child. So I felt like, maybe I need to go to an all-boys school and a Catholic school and be strict, rules,
cut out all distractions,
no girls, and I, that way I can focus more. That didn't do anything. It didn't work. It was even worse. You would just skip out on classes and all that stuff. The good old days. But yeah, I went to Hudson Catholic here, which is now a co-ed school, and so I was familiar with Jersey City, and my older sister already worked here at Exchange Place. She was a currency exchange broker who dealt with Latin America, so she dealt with Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, and all these places. And at the time, she kept telling me, dude, you got to come here. You got to, man, I would love to do something together. You should come check it out. And I said, all right, maybe. In the meantime, she moved here from Millburn. And so I ended up kind of spending some time here with her in Jersey City. I would stay at her house and kind of roam the streets during the day. At the time, there was really nothing around here, for the exception of the Majestic, where Ratza is now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That was the Majestic Cafe. Where Luna is now, that was the Merchant.
Oh,
wow. Because it used to be an old bank, so that's why they call it the Merchant. Because it's the old bank vault that's still in there. So it's called the Merchant. And then where Uncle Momo was called Marco and Pepe. Oh. And that was owned by a guy from Spain who we became friendly. And he also worked in the finance industry, and his wife had a store at what is that? The famous train station in Manhattan. I'm sorry.
Grand Central.
Grand Central. There you go. So she had a clothing store in Grand Central, and she had a clothing store where, ironically, the new Ratza location is.
Oh, wow.
That was a clothing store there as well. It was her clothing store, and then they had the Marco and Pepe Cafe. And that's it. There was nothing else. Ibby's Falafel was here. Yeah. The Beechwood wasn't there. It was an old appliance store. So, I was here before anything was really here. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, I decided to just kind of found the location where it was, and I fell in love with the backyard. And this was right before Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
And,
were you affected by Hurricane Sandy?
We were dramatically affected by Hurricane Sandy. We were dramatically affected by Hurricane Sandy at the time. We had gotten the locations prior to Hurricane Sandy a few years. So, what Hurricane Sandy was 2012, 13, I think it was. And I already had acquired the location. So me and my sister decided to join forces. Yeah. And we decided to do, kind of go into this thing together. Yeah. As like a brother and sister project. So she had a vision and a goal of having like her own little store with Portuguese, like artisanal products and stuff like that. Fun.
Yeah.
Kitschy
like
stuff.
little mosaics and
like little mosaics, little artisanally handmade bags. Yeah. And, pillows and jewelry from Portugal, like artisan stuff. And so we decided to embark on this journey together at that location, and we both fell in love with it. And we said, "Listen, look, let's do this together. You do the store upstairs, which is the store was above me. I'll do the restaurant thing. I already had the experience. I already knew. I already it wasn't my first rodeo, as they say." And I fell in love with the location because I thought it was the right size to do my concept, which was like a tavern, a tasca, where you could find many in Portugal, roaming down the little side streets, right? Yeah. And that was my vision, my goal to accomplish, and I thought the space was perfect. And then I don't know if you remember the backyard. It was just like a paradise.
Yeah, it was magical.
It was magical.
Like, it made you feel like you were in Portugal.
Oh, man, it was so magical. And that was what kind of, grasped me in to the location. And so I started my journey on modifying it to get it to look old. Yeah. And give it that magical aesthetic. And then Hurricane Sandy wiped it all out. Oh. And I just, I just said, man, this is crazy. But I believed so much in that project that, I confronted the landlord at the time, and I said, look, I ain't going anywhere. But I need you to work with me. I'll stay here. I want to keep the lease. I want to stay here, but you got to work with me. I want
which makes sense,
and he agreed at the time. Unfortunately, God rest his soul, he passed away. But he had agreed, and we worked together. We had a beautiful relationship. And at the time, the building even needed to. So they wanted to condemn the building because it was collapsing in the back end. Yeah. And I was able, through some contacts of mine, through my family who knew engineers, were in the construction business, to be able to get an engineer to come in and kind of figure out a formula to say, okay, look, you want to open the back, and that's what kind of made me open the back. Yeah. Right? To have the backyard visible was that. It was an opportunity. The building needed to be rehabilitated and needed a structure fixing. I was able to get an engineer to come in and sign off on the project and tell us exactly what needed to be done. I covered that cost to get that done for the owner as well. It was to my benefit as well. Yeah. And it was a win-win for us both. And he was going to work on me on the rent and stuff moving forward. So I had quite a very long lease there on that location. So like I said, it was just a passion project, man, about the culture, about the arts. And I know you're an artist. Yeah. And look, I love the industry. I love the business. I've always loved like fashion, the fashion industry. That was my real first passion. Yeah. Unfortunately, I had a very old school father who didn't agree with it. No, I can imagine. Yeah, so I had to really quick pivot in a different direction. But I guess I knew very early on that this was kind of what I wanted to do or what I needed to be doing. And a quick explanation why is because I love fashion. I love the industry. I think it's phenomenal. My idol is Ralph Lauren. Oh, wow, I love Ralph Lauren. Yeah, I love his he's amazing. That guy is just unbelievable in every aspect. So I love architecture. I love art. I love paintings. I love sculptures. I love, man, you name it. I love
beauty.
It.
Right?
Beauty. I love anything beautiful. General, I love music. I love people. I love food. So when you take a step back and you look, you're like, dude, the restaurant business, I'm the owner. So for example, every restaurant I've ever owned, I designed it myself. Oh, wow. I decorated every single restaurant myself, and I cooked in every single restaurant. Yeah, I used to, I started cooking. Yeah. And for me, it's, when you start analyzing everything, it's like, okay, the restaurant business is about people. I love people, right? When you walk into a cool place, they got cool music on, and anyway,
it just changes your mood.
It changes your mood. So I love music. So we already got two of the things that I enjoy, right? Then you got architecture and design. So I love aesthetics. When you walk into different restaurants, you feel the what they're going for. You have different moods, different vibes that were purposely created for that effect. So you have the design aspect of it, right? You have, for example, I've had certain locations where architecturally beautiful as well, right?
Wow.
On the design aspect. Then you have the decoration, the paintings on the walls and the pictures and all that. The aesthetics becomes art. It's an artful thing. And then, it's the food. Then it transitions into the food, right? You can express yourself in different forms of art and colors on a plate.
Yeah, that's
right?
exactly. I remember the squid you guys had, like the presentation of it on the plate.
Right.
It was just so beautiful.
So all of that is, taps into your world of art, of being an artist. And that's what we are at the end of the day. In the restaurant business, we are artists, who just have a different form of canvas or clay or whatever it is that, in different realms of the business. And we kind of just, again, we play around with ingredients, with colors, with flavors, with things like that.
Yeah.
And that's the intriguing part for me of the whole thing. I like new stuff. I don't like sitting still.
Yeah.
I like to
reinvent
and try new things and figure it out.
And I mean, that's where I agree with you when you say, like, sometimes people reach their limit and that's it. Like, they think, oh, I'm good now. They don't think, oh, how can I make this better? How can I improve? How can, for future?
Right.
And I think that's very, like, I don't know if, like, stifling is the word.
Yeah.
It feels like you're held back,
You definitely.
Yeah, and then you question yourself, like, oh, do I want too much in life, or is this normal? You know what I mean? Like, is this the next step that I should do, or should I just be content? But you're absolutely right. What you said earlier.
You said something magical right there, man. You ask yourself, is this enough? Is this what you want to do?
Yeah.
It's ironic because I've reached a point in my life where I'm it'll be 40, and I'm halfway through my life.
Yeah,
really?
when you put it like when you start thinking like that, it's scary.
You're halfway through your life. I've been doing this 20 years. I got ahead of the game very early.
Very early.
There's a lot of guys starting a restaurant at 40. I've already opened 5.
Oh wow!
On my own.
Yeah.
Right. And that's another thing. I've done a lot of this, of course, with support of family, some friends, and but I've done it on my own. I've done it almost on my own dime.
Yeah.
No
That's
real
unheard
investors.
of.
No, nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Just
That's
figuring
passion,
it out on my own. And if I, to get into a little more in depth and more serious, it's very difficult, man. And I've reached a point in my life where, what really matters? Like I'm asking myself those questions.
Yeah,
me too. What really matters in life? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, we've reached, a crazy place in the world now where, people aren't really appreciating certain things anymore.
Yeah.
Where people just want, quick, fast, cheap things like that. And it gets difficult to kind of express yourself,
Absolutely.
as an artist.
Yeah.
And maybe you can relate, where you do something, you don't feel appreciated for it. So, over the last few years, I've gotten overwhelmed by, of course, as you know, I ended up opening up Tambourine Bar and Grill, and then Ada Merceria, which were all, again, passion, vision. Again, it's like you, if you're going to do a new sculpture, a new painting, it's just a new canvas with something new you have in your mind you want to express. And that's kind of what those were, all passion projects and things in my mind that I wanted to express and share with the world. And maybe it was bad, it was wrong timing, maybe, which I don't think so. I just think I've gotten to the point in my life where, I've burnt out. And now I'm asking myself, is this what I really want moving forward? And maybe a lot of people aren't expecting to hear that, but I've kind of felt into a little bit of a dark place, and if that's going to help anyone, listen, being an entrepreneur is very difficult. It can take a toll on you mentally. It's very lonely. being an entrepreneur. It's extremely lonely.
You're just in your Phoenix era. You
Yeah.
know, like right now you're soon gonna rise from the flames, but
Yeah,
I think
I like that.
I think the best
beautiful.
part of, because I think like great music, you know, like
Yeah.
breakup songs, heartbreak songs, film, those all come from like dark places, heartbreak, sometimes death, you know.
Yeah.
It's like how you, what do you make with that? Do you know what I mean? Like now that I'm older, I can before I'm like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? Blah blah blah. But now that I'm a very spiritual person, and I like to go to a lot of like Reiki and spiritual people.
I love that,
And now I learned to be like, what is this teaching me? Why is it like if something happens twice to me, I'm like, okay, what is this lesson that I need to learn now, so I don't go through this again? Do you know what I mean?
I know
Once you
exactly
alter and
what you
switch
mean,
that, you start to see things. You know, I mean, it's not an accident that you started so early and you were able to do so much and and so many amazing things. I think sometimes like we're humans don't like change for survival, because that's how we always like you know through extinction. I forgot how to pronounce it.
Right, extinction.
Yeah. We don't like change, so we sometimes I feel like spiritually when we got to go to the next level, like life will literally force you in a way, like beat your ass to be like improve. You know what I mean?
Beautiful thing. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. I'm in that phase.
Yeah.
I'm in that phase of change. I'm going through a breakup, separation. With a fiance, and for those of you that don't know, I've kind of handed over my businesses to take a step back to take care of my mental health. Right now, which is more important. And I think that. As you're saying, and thank you. That's beautiful. I kind of needed to hear that stuff. I'm kind of in the phase of something is coming next. I don't know what it is yet, but I have a feeling it's going to be like next level stuff. Whatever it is, I don't know what it is yet, but it's going to come to me eventually.
You just got to trust the journey, and then because soon you're going to be like, it's like what they call, like Oprah says, like she has like a spiritual soulful Sunday for like great entrepreneurs that they like give lessons how they manage dark times to light times, and she calls it the aha moment. When you like lived in a way and you never like change, and then something happened that made you change. You're like, oh my gosh, that's an aha moment. I never thought about it like that. So now it sucks, the difficult time, but like a year from now you're like, I'm so glad this happened because this opened my eyes to like a new venture or a new way to do something.
I believe so. I hope you're right, man. But listen, for those listening out there, you're not alone. I'm sure you've gone through it. You're going through it. Listen, you're not alone. Everyone goes through it. I'm going through it. I never thought I would. I am. And it's okay. It's okay.
Absolutely.
It means.
The fact that you said that you're able to step back to like take care of your mental, I think that's amazing, because
that was hard, man.
Portuguese and Brazilian people, we're not
stubborn. We're stubborn.
We're very similar. So like when I was younger and I would tell my parents I'm a little depressed, they were like, well, that's because you have too much time on your hands. Did you do this? Did you go back in the pool? Did you cut the grass? Did you call your grandma?
100%.
Do you know what I mean?
100%.
So you grew up thinking like, oh, why am I sad? I don't have time for this. Like this is not
like, it's not normal.
Yeah, like
Yeah, we were definitely born into tough cultures. Especially Portuguese culture too, man. And I was old school dad and old school way of thinking. It's very tough, and it's almost like, what are you doing? Stop being a wuss. You know? Like, come on, man up. You got this. You can exactly like you said. Why are you crying? Why are you this? Why are you that? Oh, you got nothing to do.
Exactly.
You're never gonna be this if you don't do that. And listen, it's important, to know. And I got to the point and stage where I felt like everything was going wrong, right? And not because I'm not good, but I am not good mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I hit a wall, and I felt like, gosh, I've been going hard for 20 years. Even the pandemic, I did not stay home one day.
Oh, wow.
One day.
Oh, wow.
Even from the moment they said, everyone will be closed tomorrow, I'm like, I'm not closing. I'm going. That's the Portuguese mentality. Nope. No one's taking me down.
Until I pass out. I'm
going to keep going. And I did. And it was rough and it was challenging. And look, I survived, I survived Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
I survived the pandemic. And, now the mental thing, I've been going pound punch for punch,
Yeah.
over the years. And I think I've gotten to the point where, and again, literally by myself, not with the proper team. And I think that's partially my fault because, in a way, I never actually really went to culinary school.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went to ICE in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And I walked in. This is another funny story. I walked in first day of class, right? Signed up to take a class and this. I'm going in. And I already had my restaurant.
Oh, wow.
I already had 2 restaurants
Yeah.
by the time I decided to go into the culinary school. And I'm like, you know what? I should just go. Maybe there's something I don't know.
Yeah.
Something magical that I'm going to learn. And I remember I walk into class. Everybody's introducing themselves. And the teacher's like, dude, I know you. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. He's like, you look familiar. And then, what's your name? Oh, Mike, this and that. And he's like, dude, you have the place in Jersey City, right?
Yeah.
This bro place. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. He's like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
You don't need to be here.
Yeah.
And I said, well, listen, man, it's not that I don't need to be here. Maybe I'm curious. I like to learn. I like to learn. Maybe there's something I don't know. And he's like, listen, dude, you don't need to be in here. You're way beyond that point. And then I ended up staying anyway.
Oh, that's good.
For that class. And ironically, he made me his assistant in class.
No way.
Yeah, so I became the assistant. He was teaching, and then he's like, "Oh, can you show them how to cut the onions?" And it's very basic knowledge. And listen, not knocking school or going to class or getting that done, but I felt like I had this like natural
like
thing,
a fire,
it was like an intuition.
Yeah,
man. Like I already knew what to cook, how to cook, how to fuse the flavors, how to make it all, put it all together. The only regret, right, I have in the business, which I think would have really catapulted me into the next level, was not going to like stage or go work at other restaurants. Mm-hmm. Like I literally 20 years old, boom, opened my restaurant. Yeah. I never ran a restaurant before. I never knew what it was like. I just figured it out. Yeah. And I just figured it out. You just learn as you go. I just learned as I go. Yeah. Right? I'm like, who cares? I do it. Yeah. I just... And that's something like I can't even explain. It's like I already knew it. Yeah. Hence I wrote a letter when I was like 15 in school that I was going to be a restaurateur. Yeah. And who knew that would actually take place, how it took place. But I do regret not working at other places or other big restaurants, bigger name chefs, to get a little bit further in the knowledge, because I think that's made my job even harder, not understanding certain things and kind of figuring it out as I go, where I probably could have helped me build a better team. Not that my team was not good, but I think it could have been better actually. And I think the fact that I chose to keep my restaurants cultural, specific, and very, very niche, and authentic, and tried to be as authentic as possible. In them, I think made it even harder in the industry that's already hard enough. Yeah. Because in all my restaurants, I used like I would use Portuguese olive oil. I would use Portuguese vinegar, salt, pepper. Oh my God! Every single ingredient.
And how was that for like profit margins?
Man, it was hard.
I can imagine.
It was hard. I mean, clearly everyone knows like my prices weren't the cheapest, but I listen, I was like,
no, but it was like
what would cost.
It felt like you were like in your friend's grandma's house for like a Sunday dinner. You know what I mean? Sunday lunch.
Yeah, that was
it was worth it. I mean, because there's a lot of restaurants here that are even more expensive, and it's just like, horrible. Yeah. But yours was like it's like you time traveled. Like to the 90s in Portugal at like your friend's grandma's house that just invited you. Yeah. It was just like that authentic. Even like the color of the wood you used, it was like a darker, like I think Brazilian cherry wood. Yeah. It really was like that authentic. You're like, oh, I really I really, and I remember that like the tables were like
Everything
this
was
wood,
handmade,
like
homemade,
carved,
specifically carved.
It really felt like, it was like when you go to Disney where you have like that experience, everything's like perfect. That's what it was like, but the adult version.
Yeah.
No.
And thank you, man. That means a lot to me, because that means that I achieved what I really wanted to achieve. And that, I think that's very important in a restaurant. Not just to food. I think that the industry has become, again, so artistry in the sense that, I think that, restaurants now need to be somewhat of gimmicky.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's
I was going to say that next.
Right?
Yeah.
Restaurants, I feel like, need to be gimmicky for them to be considered cool or the place to go.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like, and I think I'm having a hard time with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's why I think it all came together where I'm like, wait a minute, I need to, take a break mentally, figure things out, and maybe do something different. But I just think that, people, it's like, forget the flavor. It's like, oh my God, if it's not Instagrammable.
Yeah. That's so funny. I was just having this conversation.
Like, if it's not pretty,
food now
it's
doesn't
not
even
good.
taste like cocktails. It's just like, it has to be like a sculpture. It tastes horrible. But, they have little flowers, a little umbrella, and it looks like you're in a resort somewhere, but it doesn't taste good. But people don't care anymore, because people cannot taste the food in an Instagram picture.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? It's just like, all my friends, like, they want to go to, like, restaurants that, they bring out drums and those little, like, flashy candles for their birthday.
Right.
And the food is just, like, dry as hell. And I'm like, guys, are we, like,
or
do you want to go somewhere else?
Or it's normal, or it's not, something you find in other places. Listen, I mean, everyone's entitled to do what they want or live their dream out the way they see fit and want to live their dream. I feel, for me, I don't like that stuff personally.
Mm-hmm.
I when I have a goal, you're an artist, right? If I tell you, whether you're painting or doing a sculpture, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you wouldn't like for me to come into your studio and be like, why don't you? Dude, I'm not the artist. You're the artist, right? Like, then it's not your work anymore. It's my work. It's everybody else's work, and that's where I think the world and society has had that little disconnect, right? If it's like people want to come into your restaurant and tell you what they want and how they want it. And that's what I think, there's the variety out there for that reason. If you don't like a certain place, you don't have to go there.
Then leave.
You go where you feel most comfortable, right? You're not going to go to a Broadway show that you don't like, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the restaurant business has become. It's a gimmick. It's a Broadway show. First of all, you got to build out the place to have the aesthetics that you want, right? The play setting. And then you got to have the decorations and all that stuff. It's important, right? Then you got to make sure it's beautiful and Instagrammable, right? It goes along with your story. And then the food has to have the flavors. You have to have the right ambience, right lighting, right music, the presentation. And that's kind of the show. And that's what, in reality, people are paying for or used to pay for. I mean, in certain instances, there's a lot of great places. I know a lot of great chefs in the industry doing fabulous things.
But I think the most thing that's like detrimental to businesses nowadays, it's like negative reviews, and it's not like how it used to be where people were like authentic, like genuine, like, hey, this wasn't good. Nowadays, it's like, oh, can I get 10% discount? And if they don't get it, they write a bad review. Do you know what I mean? I think there's no regulations, and it drives me crazy. And I see it all the time.
Man, that is a very fortunate thing, but I feel like it's in every industry, really, right?
Yeah.
But that one in particular, that was one of the worst things that I think possibly could have happened in our industry, especially for the mental health side of things, because as an artist, you want to create and you're putting your heart, soul. No one's perfect.
Yeah.
Nothing is perfect.
Yeah.
We strive to be perfect. We strive to do the right thing, but certain times it does come out perfect. And again, it all depends on your team and and everything that you got in your training and all that stuff. But you know, it can take a toll on you,
Oh,
right?
absolutely,
And
yeah.
initially for me, I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep. I'd go home and freak out, and, you know, it would just, you know, tarnish you inside. But as I got older and more progressive into the whole thing, I just stopped caring about that stuff because I'm like, dude, everybody's a food critic all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Everybody's a food blogger. You know, now food
There's
critics...
no like vetting for these people. You know what I mean?
There's no vetting. Yeah,
it's like-
and now it's like food critics are
Yeah.
18 years old, you
Yeah.
know, working for food writing in New
Yeah.
Jersey. Dude, have you traveled the world yet? You're not even
Exactly.
old enough.
Like name 3 top restaurants. You know?
Right? You're not even old enough.
Yeah.
You don't know culture of food. Like, and that's the part that's upsetting is, you know, there's people who are like, hey, you know, I love, you know, whatever, Portuguese food or
Yeah.
Brazilian food. And then they come in and they criticize it.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, what is this? And I'm like, excuse me. Have you even been to Brazil?
Yeah.
Have you even been to Portugal?
Yeah.
Do you even know what it's supposed to taste like? You know? And that for me was a challenging
Yeah, I
part.
can imagine.
You know, because you have a lot of people, you know, who and listen, there's nothing wrong with that, man. Everybody's entitled to have their opinion. Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, but if you have like no credibility, then I don't think you can be taken serious. Like, I understand a complaint. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
that's
yeah.
the thing that like I had to learn. You know, before I used
It's
to be the
so
same. I
hard,
used to get
man.
upset. Somebody's like, "Oh, I don't like this
It's so
painting."
hard.
I was like, "What am I doing with my life? I'm a failure. I'm gonna quit today." And then I'm like, "Bruh, like, can you name me like 3 top artists?
Right.
What's the best gallery in the world? You know
Of
what I mean?
course.
Like, if you have no credibility, thank you for your opinion. I don't agree with it. We can shake hands, have a coffee." But I'm not gonna get upset. You know what I mean? But if it's somebody else that is like, Tarik, you should want to change this, and they do understand about it, I'm like, oh, you're right, I didn't catch that. Thank you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you just gotta learn how to separate.
100%, man. You have to be, again, mentally prepared for
Yeah.
that. Even as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
you know, it's you are a punching bag when that happens.
Oh,
right?
absolutely,
Things,
yeah.
you know, words hurt,
You gotta, like,
comments
duck,
hurt.
like
Yeah,
Muhammad Ali,
you're
right?
constantly ducking
Yeah.
around. And listen, you can lose sleep over that, and that's the most difficult part is wrapping those thoughts around your mind and staying focused on your vision and on your goal. And that's something that I did. You know, and I till this day I get criticized for how I am and the things I do and how I am, and you know, I speak my mind. I really don't care. You know, has gotten me in trouble sometimes, but it is what it is. But like for me, like I always stuck to the goal. Right? This is my vision. This is what I want to put out. And you know what? Maybe sometimes it didn't work, but that's okay. Right? Because I can at least say, you know what? I didn't change it because so-and-so said it needed to be like this or it needed to be like that, or was not traditional to him, or that's not how his mom made it, or whatever, you know. And that's the beauty of it all. And that's what people don't understand. For me, it's a beautiful thing. It's that, you know, like I'll take Portugal, for example, because I'm Portuguese.
Yeah.
Portugal is literally the size of New Jersey, maybe even a little smaller, right? So, you know, the criticism I got many times, it's, you know, people come here from, let's say, Lisbon, right? They left Lisbon in the 70s or 80s, right?
Yeah.
Let's say they were 30 years old or 20 years old, or like my family came here, some of them, they were 16 and 17 years old, right? So you move at such a very young age. At the time, you didn't have a chance to travel through Portugal, and it's so small.
Yeah.
Right? But the beauty about it is that, you know, even though it's so small, from town to town, village to village, same thing in Brazil, you know, because I did a lot of research on Brazil, the food is so different. The same dish is completely
It's
different.
like black and white,
It's like, but it's the same dish.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the same dish in their city, town, neighborhood versus the one I grew up with. The disconnect that people have, and the major issue, right, is that, you know, when I did Tambourine, for example, I'm not Brazilian. I just love culture and I love food. And I wanted to build something for Brazilians.
No, the food was amazing.
For Brazilians, that was different.
Yeah.
Something unheard of, unseen. Because typically when you go to a traditional restaurant in Newark, for example, it tends to be from Minas style cuisine.
That's where I'm from. Yeah,
Minas. Okay,
yeah.
so most Brazilians in Newark are from Minas, right?
Yeah.
So every restaurant you go to that has been introduced to the public has been a form, a style of Brazilian cuisine from Minas, right? So now the guy from Rio doesn't understand Minas cooking, so he's going to have a lot to say. Oh, that's not Brazilian. That's not right. Or I encountered many things where, someone from even Portugal or Brazil, right? They would come, and meanwhile, oh, this is not Brazilian. This is not Brazilian. This is not what my mom makes or how I. And mind you, they're like 20 years old. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself,
what do you know?
Listen, what do you know about
Exactly.
your culture?
Yeah.
When you left Brazil, when you were a baby.
Yeah.
You're 20 years old now. You only know what you've eaten here or what your mother has cooked. Not discrediting moms.
No, of
moms
course,
cooking is always
Shout
the
out
best.
to moms,
Right? Shout out to moms. But maybe her mom or their mother was just from that small town or village, and she never got to experience anything outside of that cuisine, whether it could have been like speaking my family, right?
Yeah.
I come from a very, very poor family who started their lives in Portugal, extremely poor. So they didn't even have enough money to do anything at all.
Yeah.
So they would buy, for example, my grandmother was a single mom of my mother and my uncle. Excuse me. And they would kind of pool money wherever they could over the year, and they would, like, for example, buy one pig.
Oh, wow.
Right? And that one pig, they would eat everything.
Part of it.
Man, the hood, the feet, the tail, the snout, the tongue, even the eyeballs.
You get creative,
right? You get creative because you have to survive. That's your form, and that's all the money you have. So for them, they were not going to Lisbon to eat at the restaurant there. They were not even going to the nearest town to the restaurant because they couldn't afford it. So for them, for example, my grandma only knew what her mother taught her in cooking, what she experienced from the neighbors. So for her, whatever she did, that was Portuguese food.
Yeah.
But if you would have taken them and took them to Lisbon for dinner, they probably would have been blown away at some of the other Portuguese food they had.
Cuisines,
right?
Yeah.
They're like, whoa, I've never even seen this before. And that's kind of where, I wanted to kind of introduce different variations of cultures, but I wanted to keep them as authentic as possible into those regions and areas. And then, of course, certain things you tweak a little bit here. You add your own signature to it because you're an artist, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I wanted to do. But then, of course, you get backlash. But you get backlash, and again, like you said, whether you're painting a canvas or whatever, and that's, again, everybody's entitled to criticize, to say what, express themselves. They don't need to be malicious about it.
No, that's so funny you say that, because on my last day in Lisbon, I went to this like Brazilian restaurant, and I chose like feijoada, but it was so different. And I grew up with like taught to admire people's like twist on whatever it is, you know what I mean? Sure. So I remember I was at the restaurant and it had like pieces of bacon, but then like fried pieces of bacon, like, and some crunchy stuff. I didn't know what it was, but I thought, oh my gosh, it wasn't like, oh, this isn't feijoada. I thought, oh, I never thought about it like this. It's so interesting to have this like texture to the feijoada. And there was like this guy from a different state, and he was like at the table next to me, and he like ate. And then I guess like the manager was like, oh, how was your experience? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, it was good, but actually this is not how you do feijoada. And then he went on this big, like this huge like speech. And then I told him, I was like, we're not in our country. You're not even from the state feijoada was created from. I said, this is a different twist. Just eat, experience the cuisine. If not, just tip and leave, Right. And he was just like, oh, I never, like, you just seeing like his face like going from anger, like, why are you interrupting my conversation, to like, oh, maybe you're right. I didn't think, just to enjoy. It's like, you don't have to give a lecture. Just shut up and enjoy. That's the beauty of life, It
is the beauty of life, yeah. And I think people miss that.
Yeah.
People miss that thing. It's like they go into a restaurant being a gladiator, and they're already looking, for what's wrong.
Yeah.
You know what
I'm saying? Or
I
know better. Or let me tell you,
and that's crazy, man. It's crazy that things have gotten to that level, and it's rough, man. It takes a toll on you, man.
Yeah.
It does take a toll on you after many years of beatings.
Yeah. But you got to learn how to protect your peace. I think that's the journey you're on right now.
That's the journey I'm on, man.
You got to like give back energy to people who deserve it,
100%.
If not, you have to learn how to shut it off right away. That's what I learned to do with like criticism, If it's somebody that's just like trying to impress their date or whatever, I'm like, yeah, you're right, cool. I'll think about it.
Man, let me tell you, it's complicated and it's very difficult because, after 20 years of doing the same thing, because it's like when you do something repeatedly over and over and over again, that's all you know.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
Yeah.
I've been doing this since I was a kid, and now I'm halfway through my life and I'm like, man, was it all worth it?
Yeah.
Is it worth it? What should I do next?
Yeah.
Should I, now I'm being hard on myself.
Yeah.
Because now, life goes by so quickly and you're so entertained and trying to prove yourself to the world that you
to
do
yourself
this,
too,
and to yourself or to your family, or you're stuck on this, childhood thing against your dad or your mom or your sister or something, and you want to prove them wrong. That, boom, before you know it, you're like, whoa, dude, 40, bro. 40.
And I think like the most dangerous thing is to like lose the passion for what you love, because then you get burned out, and then that's when like you go through. That's to me like the most.
Happened. That's what happened to me, man.
That happened to me before. Like creatively, I couldn't like paint for like a long time, because I just like working so hard, like trying to do so many things, and once you lose the passion, like I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I? You know what I mean? Like you step out of your body. Where when you're in like in the passion mode, you don't feel tiredness. You don't feel anything. You're just so connected to your passion. You could like be there for 3 days in a row if nobody bothers you.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So
I know exactly.
Yeah, I think losing the passion is the most.
I lost it.
It's like worse than writer's block, because
I lost it. Yeah, I lost it. Unfortunately.
But you're gonna get it back. You got this. What sign are you?
Yeah, I'm a Gemini, but it's like borderline Cancer. So
are you June-ish?
June 20th. Cancer is 21.
Oh wow, okay.
So I'm like borderline. I was born at 2 p.m. 2 something p.m. on June 20th. So I'm a little bit going towards the Cancer side. But so I guess we're complicated people, right? We have all these personalities going on in our own brain, and we haunt ourselves.
And you guys, I think like you guys want answers to questions, like, and things has to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, my sister, you remind me a lot of my sister, 'cause she's like that.
100%.
Like things need to make sense. You know what I mean? If it's not, then you start asking so many questions, like internally and externally.
Yes, and the internal part is the problem.
Yeah.
Because it eats away, and you can go to bed and
you can go like in the depth, like you're just thinking, and then boom, 4 hours later it's like 5 a.m. You're like, what?
Yep. And that's kind of my problem, man. Or clearly your sister can relate, and it's very hard, man. I get into my own head, and that's the problem. You just think things, and you're going through it, and I did. I lost my passion, my drive for the industry. Yeah. Maybe COVID had something to do with it, or maybe I'm just tired, man.
Yeah.
20 years.
20 years, no break. You're gonna burn out.
Yeah. I spent 15 of those years in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Basically.
Especially you say like no days off during quarantine.
Days off, man.
You didn't even get to experience like a good quarantine.
I didn't get to experience anything.
There's basically no quarantine for you. It was just like,
Well, hence why I've lost every relationship I've been in.
Well, that's
because I didn't really experience life the way it should, and now it's haunting me. Now it's those are the things that I really want. I want a family. I want to build something for them, because you get to a point, you're young and selfish. It's all about you and your dreams, and you don't care about anyone else or anything else, and you're so focused
and
on
you're so motivated.
You, and you forget about what's more important. And now I think, again, I'm halfway through my life, and I'm like, okay, what am I doing this for? Okay, I have
what's
all these
the point?
restaurants, I have all these things. For who? For me? For I don't have a kid, which I wanted, and I always thought I would be a young dad. Never happened, unfortunately. But it's like, what am I going to do? Who am I going to hand it off to? What am I mean, yes, I have nieces and nephews, sure, but what is all this for?
Mm-hmm.
You know, for all this criticism, for all these things, like, you know, the energy wasn't kind of lining up right.
Yeah.
And I think, okay, now it's time for me to take a little break, a timeout. I'm gonna take a few months. I'm kind of planning on going to Portugal, and Europe for a little bit. You know, I want to go to Italy, with Greece, take a little European backpack trip, and maybe kind of get lost in a small little village. Maybe go pick up a shift at like a little restaurant.
You know what you need? You need that. You know that movie Eat, Pray, Love. Elizabeth?
I was just about
you
to
need
say that
moment. You need that with
that.
you. I think that's what's missing. You know,
because
being surrounded by people, especially in your career, all the time, is mentally, spiritually, and physically draining. You know,
and all those aspects. I'm drained. I'm drained. I definitely need to find myself. You know, and you know, it's like, when I'm in my passion and I'm in my zone, I can be dangerous, because like nothing's stopping me. Nothing's getting in my way. Like I'm, you know, like you said, you go 3-4 days, you don't even sleep, you don't even realize it. And you're so happy you're in the zone. And that's kind of like, you know, I miss that. I miss that person, you know. But again, you know, I want to be that person again, and I want everything else that comes along with it as you get older. You know,
no, you'll get it.
I want the package
you'll get
deal.
It. And when you do get it, we'll do part 2 of this interview.
Yeah, that would be great. I would not. I mean, I would love to do that.
Yeah. All right, Michael. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I had a pleasure. So much fun talking to you. You're an amazing entrepreneur, amazing person, and you're soon to be Phoenix to rise from the ashes. You know, I think
beautiful.
you're in a very cool stage. You inspire me with some cool ideas for some paintings. So do you mind just sharing your Instagram with us?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have many followers. I'm not crazy big into the social media, or yet anyway, but it's at m.casalino. That's it. So m.casalino, Casalinho. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a website right now. I'm just kind of staying under a little bit of under the radar.
You're taking some me time.
To hit my taking some me time. But you know, thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course,
it's been a pleasure to be here with you. I hope we could do a part 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever.
I feel like, you know, the universe led me to you, because I saw the article of like JC Locals to watch out for or whatever, and you were there. I was like, oh my god, I remember that guy from that. I was like, how is he doing? Like, let me try to reach out. Who knows?
Yeah, it's been some time. Here. I appreciate it, man. It means a lot to me. You know, I'm honored and humbled to be here with you, man. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'll definitely do it again, man.
It's been a pleasure for sure. Part 2 soon to come.
Part 2. Let's do it.
That's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Tarik Talk. Follow Tarik Talk on all social media channels and check out the video interviews online.